Like, share, comment on this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from the Pitchside podcast and match recaps and all other content on the channel. Follow us on social media, @PSP on Twitter, Pitchside Pod on Instagram, and you can listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcasts or any other platform. Join us here for episode 90, and to mark this milestone, help us subscribe to reach the first 1k. You are welcome. It doesn't take a lot of guessing to know where we're going to be starting here on this episode, and we're going to kick things off from Germany and the Bundesliga round 24, and it was an eventful Saturday, aside from the big point, of course, which we're going to get to, which is the Klassiker between Bayern and Dortmund. Of course, 5 matches took place before that. Of course, on Friday we mentioned that Schalke drawn against Mainz 0-0, and their situation is getting really worse. On Saturday, things kicked off with Hertha Berlin defeating Augsburg 2-1, an important victory for them. Freiburg losing to RB Leipzig, and of course we're going to be talking about that result even more when we cover their Klassiker, the two things linked really. Eintracht Frankfurt missed on the opportunity to go top of the, to go third really, at the table, and to really stamp their place into a top 4 conversation, drawing 1-1 against Stuttgart. Bayer Leverkusen managed to defeat Borussia Mönchengladbach away in a game completely dominated by Bayer Leverkusen. They had the better opportunities, they had the better chances, and they scored the goal, but it took them 77 minutes to score. Patrick Schick with the goal for them, important goal, and the first victory in a while for Bayer Leverkusen, really, the first in the last 5, and even if you extend that, it's the first in the last 6 games. It's a really bad form for Leverkusen, but hopefully for them, they could recover enough to just snitch a top 4 spot in the Bundesliga. Hoffenheim managed to defeat Wolfsburg, just as we mentioned earlier, as Frankfurt missed that opportunity. Wolfsburg lost to Hoffenheim 2-1, and after the loss in the cup, of course, in the midweek to Leipzig, they get another loss against Hoffenheim, a side that was struggling for most of this season, gets an important victory against Wolfsburg, who have their points tally stay fixed at 45 points, while Hoffenheim are now 11th with 30. What a struggle they have this season. Hoffenheim, and of course the Der Klassiker with Bayern Munich managing to make a comeback against Borussia Dortmund. 4-2 it ended at the Allianz Arena. Now I'm not gonna talk tactics and what happened in the game like I did in the review really, but I'm just gonna mention the importance, I think, of this game, the importance of this victory for Bayern. I mean, yes, it might sound to a certain point routine to say that Bayern Munich defeated Borussia Dortmund, because that's almost what happened every year for the last decade or so. Again, particularly when Jurgen Klopp left the club, it's different. All the coaches that came and gone in Borussia Dortmund, the likes of Thomas Tuchel, Lucien Favre, and Peter Bosz, and all those kind of coaches, and now it comes to Edin Terzic. All of those coaches tried and tested all of the methods really to try and beat Bayern, but they couldn't. And mostly they get dropped, and they had 4-0s and 5-0s and 6-0s, and you have that. And it seems now that it's impossible. And the details really of last night's game really suggested that Borussia Dortmund could have gone to Allianz Arena and could have won, really. You have a lead inside 10 minutes, and then you don't know how to do. You just drop back unexplicably. It's naivety. It's naivety. I said on the review that it was kind of naive, but I think it is naive indeed from Borussia Dortmund to not know how to manage a 2-0 lead against Bayern. You should have gone for the killer blow. You had the opportunities to go 3-0 up, and going 3-0 up mostly would do you the trick against Bayern. I mean, unless Bayern would have scored 5 or 6 probably, but it would do you the trick mostly. And then Bayern, of course, gone forward and turned on the heat, and Lewandowski scored first, then the penalty in the 41st minute, then the second goal, of course, in that penalty. Then the second half was pretty much all defence for Dortmund, aside from an early chance of Thorgan Hazard. But I think the pivotal point, as almost everybody agrees in this game, the injury of Haaland and the fact that he was substituted. Obviously, being substituted by someone like Tigges is not exactly the best thing in the world. The guy isn't exactly experienced when it comes to these kind of games. He isn't experienced at all when it comes to the Bundesliga, really. I mean, Tigges isn't exactly isn't exactly hitting the ground running. The guy is only 22, and he's never been involved in the Dortmund squad for a lot of matches this season. He barely has like 4 or 5 starts together in this season. He's mostly a bench player, a 22-year-old German. It's not exactly the best time to get him. I mean, probably I'd prefer Brandt to come in for Haaland, at least to give yourself some kind of experienced player, an experienced striker, an extra body maybe in that situation. But we can understand that. For Thorgan Hazard had just returned from injury. It's explainable as well, understandable why he would leave in such early time, inside 60 minutes. But then, of course, Bayern Munich just turned up the heat even more in the last 20 minutes and, started pressing even more, creating a lot of chances, and you just were waiting for Borussia Dortmund to budge, to implode under pressure, to crack under the attacks from Bayern Munich. And they did in the last minutes of the game. Lion Goretzka with a brilliant finish, of course, on the volley into the post and in the net. 3-2 for Bayern. And when you expect that Bayern, okay, but they're going to be sitting good and they're going to be accepting the fact that they won 3-2 and, they get enough. You know that Bayern don't get enough, and Lewandowski on a hat-trick, scores his hat-trick, 3 goals on the night, 31 in 23 games this season, and, in 22 games, in fact, because he didn't play against Köln, remember, in the reverse fixture. So it's... The Gerd Muller record of 40 goals is about to be broken. I can bet money on that. It's going to be broken, and if anybody's going to break in the Bundesliga, it should be Lewandowski. The guy's on 266 Bundesliga goals, and he's ridiculous. He is ridiculous. And some people still rate him as a normal striker, as not one of the all-time greats somehow. I mean, the downside to his career, eventually people are going to be looking at his career and his numbers and the way he was scoring goals and his play. I'm probably going to say, unfortunately, the guy plays for Poland, and Poland are not going to be winning no World Cups and no Euros anytime soon. His last chances at an international glory would be this year's Euro and next year's World Cup. But it doesn't look like it, really. For Borussia Dortmund, let's give them a bit of a credit. They played well for the first 10 minutes. They knew that Bayern played the high line. They strike where the iron is hard. The first 10 minutes, Bayern was shaky. It's always happening. Bayern with a shaky start. They give the opponents the edge. 2-0 up for Borussia Dortmund. They should have gone for the killer blow. They didn't. Bayern made the turnaround, made the comeback. 1-4-2. And Borussia Dortmund now, and this loss is just not just a dampener on their recent form, which was really, really good. They had 4 wins in the bounce after that draw against Hoffenheim, a victory, of course, against Sevilla, which is the most important, a victory against Schalke, Arminia Bielefeld, and Borussia Mönchengladbach in the cup. And we're like, okay, here are Dortmund, they're going, they're trying to catch this team, maybe they will try and, get things even more intense ahead of the business end of the season to try and save a top 4 spot, but it ends up that they are now 6th on the table, 39 points, 4 points behind the closest top 4 spot they could get, which is Eintracht Frankfurt at 4th, 6 behind Wolfsburg, and of course 14 behind Leipzig at 2nd, so it's impossible for them to get 2nd place. The 3rd place looks even more so probably they're going to have to clinch into the 4th place, the last Champions League qualifying spot, because if that doesn't happen, it doesn't look like they will have a big chance of making it through winning the Champions League. Actually, it won't really happen, so they won't have to clinch into a top 4 spot, and that doesn't look like happening. They need to know how to defend, and, it's not about defending in numbers or defending, trying to sit deep. It's about how you defend, and Borussia Dortmund just didn't know how to defend in the last minute. Bayern, of course, having more possession and, trying to control in the game really well. Borussia Dortmund just imploded and completely collapsed late on in the game. Of course, now for Bayern, it is all about what is coming on in the future. The future holds, of course, they have the Champions League fixture against Lazio next week. Well, this week, of course, is going to be next week. They have, though, Werder Bremen in the midweek on Tuesday. They're going to have Lazio, of course, then in the or on next Saturday, in fact. They're going to be having Werder Bremen away from home. It's going to be an interesting one. Then have Lazio the weekend after Stuttgart, and then, of course, the big game against RB Leipzig, the defining game for how the season is going to be going in the Bundesliga. Could Leipzig do it? Could they not do it? I mean, this is a different animal for Bayern Munich. Leipzig are so stronger defensively than Borussia Dortmund, or in fact than any other team in the Bundesliga. They are the strongest defense this season with 20 goals, only 1 goal ahead of the other strong defense really in the Bundesliga this season, Wolfsburg with 21 goals, and Bayern, although having the absolute undisputed strongest attack, 71 goals in the Bundesliga, 34 goals conceded. It's going to be a problem. And, you know, as much as Leipzig are not exactly strong defensively compared to other sides in the Bundesliga, even below them on the table, you have Eintracht Frankfurt scoring 47 more than them. It's all about defensively being stronger, and that could be a problem for Bayern if they don't know how to break it down really well. They can't give Leipzig the same treatment that they gave Dortmund, because I don't think when Leipzig go 2-0 up, they would just relinquish this lead. They now kept 3 clean sheets in a row, and not against any team, really. They kept them against Hertha Berlin, and then against Wolfsburg in the Cup, as we mentioned, one of the strongest defenses in the Bundesliga, and they kept a clean sheet against Freiburg, a side that managed to score twice, it managed to score twice in the Bayern net. So it's not exactly the easiest of games. Definitely it is not. A side that is challenging you for the title, definitely the game is not going to be easy, so you have to expect yourself to have a tough game. Bayern need to know how to break them down if they want to. For RB Leipzig, it's all about how to deal with the attack of Bayern. If they can contain the attack of Bayern somehow, and, you know, go forward, go behind the high line, go with the speedy players with pace and with, you know, intensity and with drive, they could win this game. And if they win this game, probably they're going to get closer to winning the title if they keep their form until the end of the season. Of course, the Bundesliga continues today. The fixtures of round 24 continue today in the Bundesliga, and it's going to be FC Köln hosting Werder Bremen, while Arminia Bielefeld hosting Union Berlin. The standings as they stand at the moment: Bayern Munich, of course, on top of the Bundesliga. Definitely with 59 points, 57 of 55 points for Leipzig. It is 53 for Wolfsburg. It is 45. Eintracht Frankfurt, of course, with 43. Borussia Dortmund or Bayer Leverkusen with 40. Borussia Dortmund with 39. And of course, it's going to be interesting to see how the Bundesliga is going to be panning out in the rest of the season. At 7th, Union Berlin with 34, Freiburg 34th at 8th, Stuttgart 33 and 9th, Borussia Mönchengladbach 33 as well at 10th, 30 for Hoffenheim at 11th, Werder Bremen, who are going to be playing today against Köln 26, Augsburg 26 as well, Hertha Berlin 21, Köln 21, of course they play today against Werder Bremen, and you have Mainz 18, Arminia Bielefeld, who are going to be facing Union Berlin 18, and Schalke at 10th with 10 points with no hope of survival. Of La Liga, it kicked off on Friday, of course. Valencia managed to turn around things at Mestalla against Villarreal 2-1, and on Saturday it was quite interesting, really, to watch Valladolid kick things off by beating Getafe 2-1. Elche managed to defeat Sevilla 2-1, quite incredible results, really, expectedly I would say, with Sevilla being exhausted completely from that cup game against Barcelona. It was, I think, demoralizing, I would say, even that game against Barcelona in the cup. 2-1 they lose. They go down, of course, at late on in their game, inside 7 minutes in the second half. From minute 7 to minute 70 to minute 77, they could see 2 goals. And even De Jong's consolation couldn't exactly help them to make a comeback in that game. They lose important 3 points, and they lose in more ground now on the top of the table. Of course, go fourth now with 48 points. 5 behind Real Madrid. No chance at this point that they will catch up on any of the top 3. So probably they're going to be accepting the fact that they're going to be 4th at the table, which is going to be a Champions League qualifying spot. Decent for them enough again, but obviously they need, I think, to upgrade their sort of ambitions, and they maybe go even higher in their dreams if they consider themselves one of the biggest teams in Spain and in Europe. Cadiz managed to defeat Eibar 1-0. Of course, Cadiz keeping themselves in a warm spot, really. Not that far from relegation, but in a pretty warm spot as well. Remember when they were 2nd and 3rd in the table early on in the season? Yeah, everybody remembers. And then, of course, in the big game, Osasuna lose to Barcelona 2-0. And what an important victory this is for the Blaugrana. Back-to-back victories and back-to-back clean sheets. After the first game, of course, against Sevilla in the Cup, 3-0, and now another clean sheets against Osasuna. You know, continuing with the same formation for Barcelona, never change a team that is winning, really, playing with 3 at the back, Mengueza, Longley and Umtiti. Of course, no PK for the next couple of weeks, which might be a good thing, particularly against PSG. Busquets, De Jong, Pedri, Alba, Dest, Messi and Griezmann, of course. No Dembele as well. You know, being sat on the bench is quite a good choice, really, but he was introduced, of course, later on. The news, of course, comes from Elias Moriba, who is introduced in this game and scored the goal thanks to assist from Messi. The Spanish midfield, 18 years old, comes on from the bench and then scores. Of course, he played 63 minutes in the game against Alaves. That was probably his first game with the first team, and now this is his 4th introduction to the club, the 2nd in the or the 3rd in the league, and of course he managed to help Barcelona defeat Osasuna 2-0. The assists from Messi, the goals from Alba, a game that Barcelona dominated and won for a change, at least. A second game in a row where that happens. Could this help them against PSG? I mean, I always ask this question, but I don't really feel like this is going to help them against PSG. It doesn't look like they will have enough in them to beat them. I mean, maybe they could win, but they could not win with enough scoreline and without conceding to just qualify. I mean, it can happen. Really, it can happen. There's a slim chance now it could happen. Maybe even doubt could creep into the PSG players now. Seeing and knowing and hearing what happened in the Copa del Rey, probably they would realise there's just a tiny bit of doubt that this game might be turning on us, of course, but again, as all comebacks need an early goal, and I don't think that Barcelona could start with such intensity against PSG to score an early goal against them, and then to force them to just, you know, sit back and defend a 3-2, a 4-2 aggregate scoreline. I mean, just forget about it. There's no remontada. I mean, maybe this kind of victories and results could give Barcelona false hope, particularly the fact that they, you know, had clean sheets after clean sheets and 3 clean sheets. But come on, it's an exhausted Sevilla. Sevilla chose to play that way in both games, in the league and in the cup. And it's Osasuna, like, I mean, it can't get any easier or any sort of simpler than that. It's Osasuna, it's 13th on the table with 28 points. You could not just not keep clean sheet against them while you on a good form and you're on a good run. But against PSG, that's not going to help, and that's not going to do anything of notice. Just forget about it, Barcelona fans. It's not happening, and there won't be any comeback. But of course, the big game on Sunday will be the derby in Madrid between Atletico and Real. Probably this one has the hopes of the Barcelona fans all held into it, that, you know, both draw points. Like, the perfect scenario is going to be a draw for both of them. Real Madrid won't be second and won't catch up to them on the table, and you have Atletico Madrid with 59 points, you have 3 points, and they still to play, of course, on the Camp Nou, and you're going to have all these kind of mathematics going on for the Barca fans, which could be interesting really to see, and hopefully we're going to have an interesting game at the Wanda Metropolitano. Huesca versus Celta Vigo kick things off on Sunday, though. As we mentioned, the derby, Atletico Madrid versus Real Madrid, then you have Sociedad versus Levante, Atletico Bilbao versus Granada, and on Monday, to finish the round, it's going to be Betis versus Alaves. Of course, Atletico Madrid face Athletic Bilbao in the midweek in a rescheduled game from round 18. That is going to be interesting to see, particularly if things go wrong in the derby. From Spain, we go to Italy and the Serie A. Of course, 3 matches only were played yesterday. Quickly, we're going to go through them as well. Spezia drawn against Benevento 1-1. Udinese managed to defeat Sassuolo 2-0 in Udine. And of course, the big game between Juventus and Lazio, 3-1 victory for Juve, a turnaround, a comeback in the second half in particular. And this game, I think, exposed, the good and the bad about Juventus as well. It exposed the slow rather than less, less than dynamic start to the games. The fact that they don't play well in the first half, they're slow, they don't build up really well, there's no movement, and of course giving the ball away in the midfield, which happened quite a lot in that first half, and that's what caused the first goal actually for Lazio, losing the ball from Kulusevski, and Joaquin Correa managing to wriggle his way through and score the opener. After that, Lazio continued to pressure a little bit, like they had 5 or 6 minutes after the goal, they continued to pressure, but then Juventus started going forward a little bit, started switching, playing on the wings a little bit more, trying to open the game, because I think they realized at that point that the strongest thing in Lazio is its midfield and its depth in the midfield with Lucas Leiva, Luis Alberto, and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. So you can't get in from there, so you had to move the play and you have to open on the wings, because with the absentees of the likes of, Maricic being pulled out of the position, not absentee, but being played as a third centre back instead of being played as a left wing back. No Manuel Lazzari on the right, so Senad Lulic is there. He's slower. He's undependingly and unbelievably slower than Manuel Lazzari would be on that right-hand side. He didn't support really in attack going forward. It's all was, leaning towards the Mohamed Fares side on the left-hand side, trying to build in with Luis Alberto and Joaquin Correa. The support was coming from Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, so you've realised at this point that they should open the game on the wings. Morata and Kulusevski started getting a little bit more wide in order to pull the players and create spaces for themselves, and the runners from behind, of course, on the likes of Aaron Ramsey and Adrian Rabiot, who scored the equaliser for Juventus inside 39 minutes. Beautiful finish again in the first time where they truly got some space behind the defenders, because Juventus didn't get a lot of space when it comes to the attack, but the first time they truly get some space. Adrian Rabiot finishes it really well. Again, I won't stress this enough, but Pepe Reina should have done really better. Now, the important thing about this victory, of course, on this turnaround in the second half, Morata scored twice, and from the spot as well. Then Cristiano Ronaldo was introduced, I think for no reason mostly, because by that point Lazio were demoralised. It was hard to see them getting anything back into that game, and if you watch the Bayern game, you know how deflated they could be after they concede 3 goals. They couldn't do anything significant in that game afterwards, and Juventus, all they had to do is to see the game off, not exhaust themselves pretty much. Pirlo managed the game, made all the substitutions he needed, and of course keeping most of his key players fresh. And if you're asking who are these key players, well, they're the ones who get subbed in late on in the game. Ronaldo, Arthur, McKennie, and of course Bonucci is keeping those guys fresh and ready for the Champions League tie against Porto in the midweek, which, still in the hands of Juve. I mean, if it wasn't 2-1, I would say different things, but it is 2-1, an easy deficit to overcome, really. Cristiano Ronaldo should be on his day, and Juventus, all of them, should be on their day to manage to turn this deficit around and to just go through it and just blow Porto out of the water. But we don't know really what could happen in the Champions League. If last year's experience is anything to go by, it's not a good sign. And maybe Juventus would drop out of the Champions League. Who knows? I mean, it will be a huge surprise if it happens this season. I mean, considering their overall form and general performances this season, it won't be, but on the day, it might be. We'll see how things are going to be panning out yet later on. Of course, the fixtures continue today. It's going to be 6 matches played in the Serie A. AS Roma making things off against Genoa. Verona face AC Milan. Fiorentina hosts Parma. Crotone hosts Torino. Sampdoria hosts Cagliari. Napoli hosts Bologna. And on Monday, it will be interesting to see how Inter are going to be doing against Atalanta. Rounding up Saturday review and Saturday recap, of course, we go to the Premier League, and 4 matches took place yesterday. In the round 27, Burnley kicked things off against Arsenal at Turf Moor 1-0 and 1-1 really. And this was, I think, a game where, I mean, this was a game going one side, but the result didn't help any. Arsenal started strong. They scored early thanks to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, classic Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang goal, who, by the way, is low-key being back to his form, really. Is really sort of, catching up to form as of late. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang now to 9 goals in the season, which is interesting to see, at least in the conversation, the fact that he has scored now a couple of goals, and he's turning on the heat. The machine is working after a season mostly where he was underwhelming and people were questioning his abilities. Should he leave the club, even after the fact that he just extended his contract in the beginning of the season until 2023? So it's not exactly the best of seasons for Aubameyang per se, but he could keep up his form. He could end up with a decent amount of goals at least to help the team reach a decent spot on the table. Of course, again, it's the Premier League and it's VAR and it's penalty controversy. There were 3 of them this week. 3 of them. 2 in the midweek, of course. The one at Chelsea, the one at Fulham and Tottenham, and now the one at Burnley and Turf Moor for Arsenal. I saw the incident. A clear penalty, by the way. No questions about it. Somehow VAR didn't even look at it. And, that wasn't decided a penalty. I don't know. Unless I don't understand how handball works and how penalties works, I think that was a penalty. Unless there's an explanation, unless the IFAB with the new changing of the rules, there's something that was implemented that I didn't know about, unless that is something, that was a penalty really clearly for Burnley. And, I'm not going to say Arsenal were robbed of a victory, because when you can't score in normal play against Burnley, you really don't expect yourself to be crying over anything. That's your fault. You save those things and penalties and whatever. You save those things for later, for press conferences, for technical reserves or something like that. But you don't talk about those a lot. In any way, the long story short, Arsenal now with 1 point stay at 10th now, 38 points. With the draw for Aston Villa later on against Wolves, of course, keeping them above Arsenal on the table. Southampton managed a victory. Finally, Southampton returned to the winning ways, really, and against Sheffield United expectedly. It seems like everyone who wants to have a winning comeback or winning back in form, he returns against Sheffield. Liverpool did it, although we all know what happened afterwards. And then you have Southampton 2-0 against Sheffield United. The goal scored by James Ward-Prowse in the first half from a penalty, and Che Adams in the second half. Good for Southampton to see them returning to such a good form. They are in quite a bad place, really, considering that at one point of the season, believe it or not, they were top of the Premier League. Yes, they were. They were top of the Premier League somehow, and now they find themselves at 14th with 33 points. In the last 10 games for Southampton, they only won twice. They only won twice in the last 10 games. And of course, it doesn't need an expert to tell you that this is not a form of a side that wants to get higher up the table and wants to end up in a good spot. Definitely not. Aston Villa faced Wolves in a game that was pretty boring, really. A 0-0, classic Premier League 0-0. We thought that these ones only reserved for the big games, but no, they weren't. Aston Villa managed only a goalless draw against Wolves, who had more possession, but didn't have a lot of sting about them, as it's mostly the case this season. But the Wolves side, the only benefiting thing for me in this game really is the fact that they have Emiliano Martinez, and he kept the clean sheets, who gave me 7 points or 10 points in the fantasy Premier League game. That's, I think, about the only advantage I could get out of this game, watching or anything. Then, of course, Leicester City made the comeback against Brighton away from home, and where we thought that Leicester City are going to be dropping points again, Kelechi Iheanacho and Daniel Amate made sure that won't happen. 2 goals in the second half, and of course, after a horrific performance, I would say, in the first half from Leicester City, bad defensive performance, Adam Lallana scoring against Leicester inside 10 minutes, but then the equaliser of Kelechi Iheanacho and Daniel Amate, set-piece defending, for Brighton is the Achilles heel. They don't defend it well, and the second goal was in the 87th minute, saving Leicester 3 points that were incredibly important really for them, and they could be extra important if Man City managed to defeat Man United in the derby today, because that would mean Leicester could keep their second spot now with 53 points, and that is going to be such an interesting end to the season if they manage to finish second on the table. Of course, the first victory in 4 games for Leicester, like that is low-key a bad form, considering that they are now second, momentarily at least. It's a really, really bad form for Leicester, but finally they returned back to winning ways, which should be a good sign for Brendan Rodgers. He doesn't have anything to play for outside of the Premier League at the moment. I mean, they have the FA Cup to play for, and of course they have. I think they have Man United in that competition. Of course, later on in March, it's going to be interesting before the international break when they face Manchester United. But for now, they're second on the table. They would, I think, celebrate that, and hopefully for them, Man City would beat Man United. And speaking of that, on Sunday, of course, it's West Brom, Newcastle, Liverpool versus Fulham, Man City versus Manchester United, and Tottenham, Crystal Palace, Chelsea, Everton on Monday, and West Ham, Leeds as well. That's it from me for this episode. I was your boy, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast episode, subscribe to the channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates from the podcast episodes and match recaps and other content on the channel. Follow us on social media, @PSP on Twitter, page SitePod on Instagram, and you can listen to this on Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. And until next time, I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.